Okay, this lesson is continuing with factoring, and it is a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to try and do it as efficiently as possible, but you'll really have to pay attention and take notes because, again, this all comes back later on in the next chapter. Okay, earlier this chapter we talked about factor by grouping, and when I look at this, we got to a point where we were like this, where we had two common binomial factors, and we said if we have these common binomial factors, right, I can factor this by pulling out the 5x minus 3, right, and basically when I divide by 5x minus 3, right, I'm left with 4x here and then minus 7 there. Okay, and that's how it would factor. Remember, factoring is basically just reverse distributing. So to go through grouping again, because it's part of the next method, right? The first thing we do is we group the first two and last two terms. So when I look at this example, I'm going to group the first two terms, and I'm going to group the last two terms. Now I'm going to look at each of these and pull out the greatest common factor. Is there a common factor between 6 and 7? And there isn't. But is there a common factor between x to the third and x squared? Yes. I could factor an x squared out of there. Oops. I can factor an x squared out of there. And when I divide each of these by x squared, I'm left with 6x minus 7 inside. Okay. Now in the next one, I look. 48 and 56 can both be divided by 8. And since, right, this first term is positive, we're going to factor out a positive 8. When I divide both of these by 8, 48x divided by 8 is 6x. Negative 56 divided by 8 is minus 7. What is my common binomial factor here? Right, it's 6x minus 7. So I pull it out. What do I have left when I take those out? I have x squared plus 8 pulled out. Okay, so this is grouping by factor by grouping. Okay, so one common thing is when we factored back in the day, the number in front of x squared was just 1, or basically you just saw x squared. But what happens now if you put a number in front of x squared? Okay, what happens is you can't get away with just doing, if I go to do this and I write x and x, right, what happens is x times x is x squared, and I need to make sure I get 5x squared when I multiply these together. So what we use is a process called AC method. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do when we use AC method to factor one like this, right, is find the numbers that multiply to give you AC. So if this is A, this is B, and this is C, AC, if I take 5 times negative 4, that gives me negative 20. And add up to B, which is negative 8. So what numbers multiply to give you negative 20 and add up to negative 8? Well, if I look, that would be negative 10 times 2. And that's because negative 10 plus 2 would give me negative 8. So my next step is once I find those numbers, I'm going to split the middle term. Alright, or split the B term is what they say. Meaning, I'm going to bring down the 5x squared. I'm going to rewrite negative 8x as negative 10x plus 2x. So minus 10x plus 2x. And then I'm going to bring down the minus 4. So all I did is use these numbers to rewrite that middle term right here. Now my last step is just to go ahead and factor that, right, by grouping. So I'm going to group the first two terms. I'm going to group the last two terms. What is my GCF in the first two terms? GCF is 5x times, right, if I divide these by 5x, I end up with 5 divided by 5 is x sorry. Right? And then negative 10x divided by 5x is negative 2x. Or sorry, just negative 2. Sorry. Now the next one, I look 2x and negative 4, I could factor out a 2 here. So I factor out my positive 2. 2x divided by 2 is x. Negative 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. So now, if I look, these should match up. And once these match up, I'm going to pull out that common binomial factor of x minus 2. And what do I have left over here? 5x. What do I have left over here? Plus 2. And we are factored. Okay, I can look now and check my answer by doing x times 5x gives me 5x squared. X times 2 is 2x. Negative 2 times x is negative 10x. 2x minus 10x is negative 8x. And negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Okay. Let's do a couple more examples here. Right? Example 2. If I multiply AC, 4 times negative 9. So 4 times negative 9 is negative 36. Adds up to B is negative 9. So what numbers multiply to give you negative 36 and add up to negative 9? This here would be negative 12 and 3. So I'm going to rewrite this as 4x squared. Then I'm going to rewrite this middle term as minus 12x plus 3x minus 9. I'm going to group these terms. So GCF here is 4x. So 4x times 4x squared divided by 4x is x. Negative 12x divided by 4x is minus 3. My second grouping, my common factor is 3. 3x divided by 3 is plus 1x. Negative 9 divided by 3 is minus 3. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to put the... So plus 3 times, the leftover is x minus 3. Do my binomial factors match up here? Yes. So I pull that x minus 3 out. And what do I have left over here? 4x plus 3. Alright. I'm going to move ahead to the checkup because there's a lot of good problems in here. Alright. And we're going to talk about something else at the same time. So anytime we factor, the first thing we have to do, step 1, we have to look for a common factor. Once we find that common factor, then we look to factor the remaining polynomial. So when I look here, right, the GCF in this problem, 2, 8, and 6 can all be divided by 2. So I pull out the 2. And what do I have left over here? X squared plus 4x plus 3. Now, if I look, I have to ask myself, can this here be factored? Okay. Are there numbers that multiply to give me 3 and add up to give me 4? Right? Remember, there's no number in front of this x squared. So 2 times, right? My first term is going to be x and x. Then what numbers multiply to give me 3 and add up to 4? 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. So this would be x plus 3, x plus 1. And that's how it factors. The next one, my GCF is negative 4 times, divide everything by negative 4. So I end up with x squared minus 3x, because 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3, minus 10. Now, are there numbers that multiply to give you negative 10 and add up to give you negative 3? If I look, that would be negative 5 and 2. So, negative 4 times x minus 5 times x plus 2. So, What happens here is these problems are not like the ones we just did, because if I look, that's just x squared, so my first term can be x and x. The next one, 3, 30, and 72 can all be divided by 3. So 3 times, I'm going to divide these by 3. Okay, and what am I left with as my GCF? If I look at my GCF, right, I'm going to get x squared minus 10x plus 24. This polynomial here, right, it does not have a number in front of x squared, so I know it's x and x. What numbers multiply to give me 24 and add up to give you negative 10? If I look, that would be negative 6 and negative 4. So this would be minus 6, minus 4, and we are now factored. Okay. The next one, out of all of these, I can factor out a negative 3. When I divide these all by negative 3, I end up with x squared plus 5x. Then 42 divided by negative 3 is going to be minus 14. Are there numbers that multiply to give me negative 14 and add up to 5? Right? That would be 7 and negative 2. So, negative 3 times x plus 7 times x minus 2. So the goal of these first 6 problems here is to know that when you're factoring, the first thing you have to do is look for a greatest common factor, and that's from section 1. So the next one, I have a common factor of 2. Divide everything by 2, and I'm left with x squared minus 5x minus, that's going to be 24. What numbers multiply to give you negative 24, add up to give you negative 5? That would be negative 8 and 3. So this factors out to be 2 times x minus 8 times x plus 3. And if I were to multiply this all out again, I would get what I started with. Number 6, greatest common factor is 3. Divide everything here by 3. I'm left with x squared minus x minus 2. What numbers multiply to give me negative 2 and add up to negative 1? This here would be negative 2 and 1. So this factors out to be 3 times x minus 2 times x plus 1. And now we are factored. Alright, now down below, right, when I look here, right away, is there a GCF in number 7? There is no GCF, so I have to use the AC method here. So AC, if I multiply 6 and 3, I get 18. And I have to find the numbers that add up, or multiply to give you 18 and add up to B, which is 11. Right? This here is going to be 9 and 2. So we're going to rewrite this middle term. So it's 6x squared plus 9x plus 2x plus 3. Now I go ahead and I group the first 2 and last 2. GCF in the first group is going to be 6 and 9 can be divided by 3. X squared and x can be divided by x. So I divide by 3x and I'm left with 6x squared divided by 3x is 2x. Then 9x divided by 3x is plus 3. If there's nothing to factor out here, we have to take something out of the second grouping, which, since this is positive, we're going to pull out a 1. So we're going to say plus 1 times. That's going to leave you with 2x plus 3. If I look, do my binomial factors match up? So they do, so it's so it's 2x plus 3. Then, what do I have left over here? 3x. What do I have left over here? Plus 1. How can I check my answer real quick? 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times 1 is plus 2x. 3 times 3x is plus 9x. 3 times 1 is 3. And right away, 6x squared plus 11x plus 3. Does that check out? Does it match up? Yep. So I know this answer is correct. The next one. AC is 10 times negative 4 is negative 40. B is negative 3. What numbers multiply to give me negative 40 and add up to negative 3? It would be negative 8 and 5. So, 10x squared minus 8x plus 5x minus 4. I grouped the first two and the last two. So I'm going to get, these are divisible by 2. So, and x, divide by 2x, divide by 2x. So we're going to get 5x minus 4. There's nothing to factor out here, so we factor out a positive 1. So plus 1 times 5x minus 4. Do my binomials match up? Yes. So 5x minus 4 times 2x plus 1. So the next one here, if I look, AC, right, 3 times negative 28 is going to be negative 84. B is negative 5. What multiplies to give me negative 84? So what multiplies to give you negative 84 and adds up to negative 5? That would be negative 12 and 7. So 3x squared minus 12x plus 7x minus 28. That will give me, right away, if I group my first two and my last two, I'm going to get 3x times, divide by 3x. It's going to leave you with x here, minus 4. Then this common factor is 7, so plus 7 times x minus 4. Common binomial factor of x minus 4 times 3x plus 7. Now my last one here, this is the tricky one. There is a greatest common factor here of 3. So I have to start with factoring out that 3. And please make sure you do that. You're left with 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Now if I look, I have to use the AC method on this part here. So I have to find the numbers. AC in this case, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. The middle term is negative 5. So right away I'm going to go up here and say my final answer is going to look something like this. Now, I'm going to write 2x squared. Numbers that multiply to give me negative 6 and add up to negative 5. That would be negative 6 and 1. So minus 6x, minus 1x, and then minus 3. Group the first two and last two. Common factor here is 2x. So 2x times, divide that, you get x, minus 3. Now in the next one, right, I have to factor out alright, excuse me here. I made a mistake on my factors here. Okay, so this would be negative 6 and 1, positive 1. So we would get 2x squared, sorry about this, minus 6x plus positive 1x, right, and then minus 3. So in this case, my GCF, when I group the first two, is 2x. So we get x squared, sorry, 2x times x minus 3 plus, there's no GCF here, so we're going to factor out a 1, and we end up getting 1 times x minus 3. Now, my binomial factor of x minus 3 matches up. So, x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. And we take these factors and bring them up to our final answer. x minus 3, 2x plus 1. Alright, so go ahead, try the quiz. This is a little tougher. If you get stuck, let me know.